He married his brother's widow for love, then used the Bible to destroy her. Catherine was the daughter of the most powerful royal couple in Spain, Isabella and Ferdinand. When Arthur, Henry's older brother, died, the Tudor dynasty did not want to return the enormous dowry. Henry's decision to replace his brother and marry Catherine was, in essence, a way to preserve that wealth and the political alliance attached to it. Under Catholic Church law at the time, marrying one's sister-in-law was considered incest. For this marriage to take place, the Pope had to issue a special dispensation. Henry asserted ownership over a woman who had once belonged to his brother's bloodline, turning her into an instrument to secure his own lineage. After 20 years of passion, when Catherine could no longer produce a male heir, only Princess Mary survived. Henry began to believe, or pretend to believe, that he was being punished. He cited the book of Leviticus, Leviticus 20 verse 21, in the Bible. If a man shall take his brother's wife, it is an unclean thing. He hath uncovered his brother's nakedness. They shall be childless. When he wanted to marry Catherine, Henry swore that Catherine and Arthur had never consummated their marriage, meaning the previous union did not truly exist in reality. This allowed him to bypass church law and marry her. In the early years with Catherine, Henry was deeply infatuated. He frequently wore clothing embroidered with Catherine's initials when competing in tournaments. He adopted the title Sir Loyal Heart to fight in her honor. They truly shared a period of happiness and intellectual harmony. Catherine was one of the most educated women in Europe at the time, and Henry enjoyed debating theology and philosophy with her. Before becoming queen, after Arthur's death and during her years of poverty in England, Catherine was appointed by her father, King Ferdinand, as the ambassador of the Spanish crown to England. She was the first woman in European history to hold such a position. She had to fight fiercely with her father-in-law, Henry VII, to defend her rights during the period when she was abandoned. While Henry VIII was campaigning in France, Scotland seized the opportunity to attack England in the Battle of Flodden in 1513. Catherine, then pregnant, personally wore armor that protected her swollen belly and rode on horseback to rally the English troops. After the victory, she intended to send the corpse of the Scottish king, James IV, to Henry in France as a gift. But finding it too horrifying, she instead sent the blood-soaked cloak of the fallen king for Henry to use as a banner of triumph. This revealed her strength and her absolute loyalty to Henry. The greatest rupture was not in Boleyn, but the tragedy of childbirth. Catherine was pregnant at least 6 times, yet only Princess Mary survived. There were times when Catherine was suspected of having a false pregnancy or suffering miscarriages, but because of the overwhelming hope for a son, she and her physicians misinterpreted the symptoms. The repeated loss of children drove Henry into an extreme psychological state, convinced that God was punishing him. Even after Henry expelled her from court and married in Boleyn, Catherine never referred to herself as Arthur's widow or the Dowager Princess of Wales. In her letters to Henry, she always signed herself as Catherine the Queen. She declared, "I am your only lawful wife, and my eyes alone have seen the truth." She kept Henry's wedding ring until her final breath. At the divorce trial at Blackfriars in 1529, Catherine performed an act that shocked everyone. Instead of sitting quietly before the judges, she crossed the room, knelt at Henry's feet, and pleaded with him in a tearful speech, swearing that she had come to him as a virgin. The entire hall was moved, and Henry was so unsettled that he had to suspend the trial. This became the greatest public relations defeat of Henry's life. In her will, Catherine asked to be buried in a convent and requested that Henry take care of their daughter Mary. She ended her final letter to Henry with a famous line, "In the end, I swear that my eyes desire you above all things." In response, Henry did not attend her funeral and forbade Mary from being present. However, it is said that he wore gold on the day of her death, a color of celebration, but also the color of mourning in Spanish tradition, an act that sparked controversy over its true meaning. When he became obsessed with Anne Boleyn, Henry abruptly reversed his position. He argued that because they had no son, it proved that God had seen their consummation long ago, and that his marriage to Catherine had been invalid from the very beginning. Henry VIII was an intensely devout man. He had once been granted the title Defender of the Faith by the Pope. Therefore, he He could not accept himself as a mere adulterer. Instead of admitting, "I want to leave my wife because she is old and I desire Anne Boleyn," Henry convinced himself, "I must leave my wife because it is God's will." He searched the Bible until he found the line in Leviticus. This allowed him to transform the guilt of abandoning his loyal wife into a lofty religious duty. From the perspective of a Tudor king, of a dynasty whose foundations were still fragile, the absence of a son was a humiliating failure. Henry believed that the ability to produce a male heir was directly proportional to God's favor and his own masculine power. Instead of acknowledging that the problem might lie with himself or biology, Henry blamed Catherine. He reasoned that if this marriage were legitimate, God would have granted him a son. Since there was no son, the marriage must therefore be wrong. This was a form of reverse logic used to evade responsibility. And Boleyn was not like Catherine. She refused to accept the role of a mistress and demanded to become queen, and refused to sleep with Henry for 7 years. This created an extreme sense of desire in Henry's mind. Anne's refusal made Henry believe that she was the pure and destined woman God had chosen for him to replace that sinful marriage. In 1509, Henry insisted that Catherine was still a virgin so that he could marry her for financial and political benefit. In 1527, Henry stubbornly claimed that Catherine had lost her virginity to his brother Arthur. Why did he do this? If Catherine had consummated her marriage with Arthur, then under biblical law, Henry was committing incest. By portraying himself as an unintentional sinner, Henry could request an annulment rather than a divorce, meaning the marriage would be treated as if it had never existed. Henry VIII suffered from a psychological condition that modern historians call convenient faith. He had the ability to believe whatever was useful for his current purpose. When he wanted to marry, he believed in one passage of Scripture. When he wanted to abandon his wife, he believed in the opposing passage of Scripture. This dramatic 180-degree reversal reveals Henry as a classic narcissist. The world, and even God's laws, had to revolve around his desires. Do you want to know what strategy Anne Boleyn used to make Henry wait for 7 years without losing interest, ultimately pushing him to dismantle the entire religious system of a nation? When the Pope refused to annul the marriage, under pressure from Catherine's nephew, Emperor Charles V, Henry severed ties with Roman Catholicism, established the Church of England, and proclaimed himself its supreme head. And Catherine, she was stripped of her title as queen, expelled from the palace, and forbidden to see her daughter until she died in solitude. Henry brought Anne Boleyn to the throne, yet he still failed to obtain a son from her, and later, he himself sent Anne to the scaffold. Henry VIII used faith as a shield for his betrayal. He did not merely take his brother's wife in name. He also stole her honor and her status once she was no longer useful. Thank you for listening. Do you think Henry actually believed the curse, or was it just a convenient lie?